trust-based philanthropy. Where we come from as a philanthropy, we want to, right? We want to build in more grants that are long-term, that basically focus on intangible milestones and indicators that exist out there, that focus on change, behavior change. And somebody brought up behavior change that is very difficult to measure. But at the same time, there is a need to trust that there is a cognizant behavior change that is happening within the community, especially in programs related to gender inequity, or working with adolescent girls, or working on mental health and well-being, right? In these spaces, we have no choice but to trust that the organizations on ground know what they're doing, because there is very little evidence on what works in this area. Gender, of course, we have more evidence, but mental well-being and mental health, we've got very little evidence. Few organizations building indicators. In fact, I was in a discussion on data, which is very different from this discussion. The second part is that I think while it's the onus of philanthropist, I would say, coming from a lived experience space, and this is all my lived experience space, that philanthropists never come from a space of trust deficit. Okay, no person will start an organization saying, I don't want to trust the ecosystem there and I want to give grants. It doesn't happen that way. This entire journey from wanting to give a grant or a funding to an organization to the space that we need to set in more robust processes to see whether the grants work well is a journey, right? And that journey happens through lived experiences of organizations and partnerships on ground. Somebody said, about an experience, a challenging experience. I won't say a bad experience. These challenging experiences historically lay within funding organizations. So because philanthropists are families, are HNIs, the ability to forget certain things are very less, right? So it stays within the institutional memory. And that's where the role of leaderships and operational team within the organization is very critical. And I'd say that is the layer that needs to be actually worked on, because the operational team, like for example me, are the change makers that could actually bring that transition, right? So when we discuss programs with our board, etc., there is a whole journey that they go with our data and with our lived experiences on ground that brings that confidence within them. So answering the final question is that communication between the operational team and within the organizations and the CSOs are very critical. I don't think trust-based philanthropy is only about funding. It's about consistent sounding boards, communication on what's happening on ground, what excites organizations that relate to the philanthropist, what is changing at the ecosystem level on the ground, not really in the frame of just programs, but everything that the organization is doing is an important factor for us to actually build that change. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Sonya. Yes, Reshma.
I'll take out that bag.
Yes, Reshma, please go ahead.
Since we're going back 18 years, I actually wanted to share my first experience with a Ford Foundation program officer. I was a young social entrepreneur. I had no networks. I had some track record, no real credentials, except I had my quarter life crisis and I wanted to move out of the private sector and do something. And his approach was one of complete curiosity. He recognized that we had an unconventional approach, but he challenged us with a lot of rigor. He was careful and he was very thoughtful. He said, what do you need beyond surviving? And it was a question that, I hadn't really thought of. He traveled with us, not to tell us what we were not doing, but to actually learn. And he held us accountable only on what he believed the community saw as change in their lives, right? And what is remarkable about that experience is that we built a relationship, as a mentor, as an advisor, that went beyond grant making, and that has endured to date. And even though I have to say that much larger grants and much larger funders came, But I think that was the fundamental beginning of, just recognizing that this could be an approach to philanthropy. That was 18 years ago. I find myself back a full circle at Ford. And what's really interesting is that some of those guiding principles, still are true. One bit is to really lead with curiosity. I think that there are too many assumptions on both sides, by the way, that we know how things work. And I think that when the ground is shifting, literally by the day, it is important for us to sit with questions, and we may not have answers, but I am often worried when we have a definitiveness of how things work, because it's difficult to predict. I also feel that we need to design with care, right? Care on both sides. Because it's not just the partnership, but also in the way we show up and we engage with each other, because this is a long term, right? Whether it's 5 years or 3 years, you're in it together for that period, right? And it's really important to, people say co-design. It's also really recognizing, how are you going to weather this together over a 3, 5, 7, 10 years, whatever may be the duration. And I think communication is not just reporting. I do want to make a distinction, It's not about just playing back, this is what's happened, this is what has worked. But it actually has to be from, again, a position of, respect, mutual respect. I want to unpack, it's not trust deficit. I feel that somewhere, there is a recognition of a certain way in which we need to show up. And I think that when there is mutual, respect in the relationship that we hold, as partners, I think it goes a long way. I'm not going to undermine the challenges, but what I'm also fairly excited about is that as the field is growing, there are many of us who've actually been on, if we are saying there are sides to this table, we've been on both sides, right? And so we carry some of those lived experiences when we find ourselves in roles where we can make an impact. And I think that it's really important to maybe shed some, long-held assumptions that both funders and organizations have of each other, and to have a conversation. I think we've lost that. Our engagement has become transactional. It's no longer conversational. Just as a simple anecdote, I ask our partners as well, how many times do you speak to us when it's not related to a grant or a disbursement? Absolutely. Right? We're peers. We're all trying to do the same thing. So, when are you just reaching out saying, I have an idea, I'd like to run it past. I'd really love to kind of talk to you about something. Because we really appreciate it, and we know that we have partners we can reach out to with the same request, because none of us know how to do this by ourselves. And so I think that appreciation and that humility and vulnerability is the beginning of trust. It is not something that, auditor certificates, with all due respect to them, yes, they are helpful, but I'm not sure that they're enough.
Very, very good points, Reshma. Yes. 3 C's I clearly capture here. Curiosity, care, and conversation. More than communication, conversation is very important. And I think we all must reflect on this from all our good and bad experiences. Can we take one step ahead? When I say we, it is for everyone, not just one side. Thank you for bringing out those 3 important points. Yes, Pratyush.
Write down another 5T from my side.
Oh, today is a day of
No.
C's and D's.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll give you certain examples all through. I've crossed 27 years of my career. 6-8 months back, I was on the other side of the table as a head of CSR and sustainability with multiple MNCs kind of things. 2016, March 31st, my NGO partners writes to me saying that, Dear Pratyush, we have done the project successfully, yet there are a small remaining at our end, 15,274. I'll still remember the number. Please let us know what to do. Imagine the trust level goes up at the donor level. For 15,000, they could have done anything and gives us bill. It was granted. This was an NGO called Dilasa from Aurangabad. And till today, anybody talks to me about Dr. Baisali Tai or Dilasa, I give a blanket approval. Please go ahead, sign with them. And today they are working with roughly 50 CR project every year. एक वैशाली ताई walks on village road, 5 मिनट में 500 लोग पीछे चलते हैं. If she goes to RTC office, or RTC stops meeting, talks to her first. Kind of, work they have done. Second example I'll give you from a big NGO, CARE, where I've also worked. I was with LTI Mindtree. I funded them about 5.5 CR. All of a sudden, I got a call from the project director saying, "Hey, Pratyush, today you were supposed to disburse second installment. Have you? No, it will be done by 6 p.m. I said, "Don't do. We have lost our FCRA." Before world could know, they literally they mailed to everyone. Pratyush mail dekha hoga, nahi dekha hoga. They were started calling to all their donors. Same lady again called. I said, FCRA se hame koi matlab nahi hua. CSR nahi because of wholesale. No, it is Indian money. We can still use. Your ATC is intact. Go ahead. We continue. Again, during a fourth installment, they again called me, said, "We also lost our ETZ. Please stop." And believe me, within a day or two, the last tranche was supposed to go out of 5.5 CSR, 5.5 CR. So these are the kind of example existed I have seen. There is an NGO in Orissa called Mohapatra Foundation. I was with the ACC much before CSR Act in 2010-11. I invited a lot of NGO to help ACC in Bargad plant, where my employees were not able to come out of the colony. The mistrust with the community and the employer was so, because it was an acquired plant of government of Orissa. All that negative liabilities got transferred to ACC. And it was not very easy to close all of them in one night. Nobody came. I have reached out to a lot of big NGOs in Orissa. Mohapatra Foundation being a small NGO, their SAPE was not even 20 lakhs by that time. They came forward. The secretary, the lady started staying in village. We have given allotted her quarter, office, everything. Believe me, in 1.5 months' time, the plant director, everybody used to go and sit with community for hours together. This all I've seen literally in my life. And when I started jotted down, I was saying, what has worked in all those things? So I was writing down in an abbreviation form, say 5T kind of thing. One is truthfulness. If you're true to yourself in other side, it works much better. And if you are transforming, you are having ability to transform impact, the trustworthiness further goes up. If you, again, in that entire work, you have to work in tandem as a team member. It's not like that I'm a donor and somebody is donating. I'm not giving and somebody receiving. It is joint liabilities, whether positive or negative. And if the donor also start coming and doing volunteering, look at any CSR project where the donor is sending volunteers to grassroots. The impact of that project will be drastically up for that. And if the leadership is driven by talent, if the talent-driven leadership are there, they'll show their agility, try to learn from each other, and grow up. And fifth one is being transparent to each other. Example of CARE, I told you. So, it's not that hamara FCRA cut ho gaya is a bad thing. It's how transparent you are to intimate to your partner so that this has happened with us. And then still you can sail through. And if you have this kind, I think, there is a good partnership relation. I have never treated any of my NGOs as donor. Always are treated as a partner. Today also, and I am on the NGO side, I also respectfully ask everyone, start, not because I'm on this side, start treating them as your partners. There are a lot of know-how at the grassroots level which can easily come out to your project. And this is how jointly we can increase the impact of the project. That's what we need at the end of our partnerships. Sorry, back
Thank
to
you, Pratyush. I think I must add, I can vouch for what Pratyush has said. Because when he was in LTI, he was one of our donors at Swades. And we traveled together. I still remember in one of the visits he had just joined. And there were some gaps because he had taken recently, but hats off to him. He came back after 1 year with a massive and very innovative strategy for aspirational block of Surgana, and he brought together 3-4 different NGOs. One of the very good example of collaboration, which I think is a need. But thank you, Pratyush, for bringing out this fight. Is very good. Yes, Riti, over to you. Now you have visibility on both sides.
Yeah,
As Bridgespan, so please
which is
share
why I
your...
was intent on going at the end. And I think if you ask lived experience as Bridgespan, we see ourselves as champions of trust-based philanthropy. And one of the efforts we have undertaken for the past 5 years in India is called Pay What It Takes. Reshma, you've been a co-travel, bridge the gap, both for funders and for nonprofits. But I think what I'm saying is just a double click on what others have already indicated. Definitely a two-way street and steps to be taken from both sides.
Thank you very much. And again, वो कहते हैं ना हिंदी में ताली एक हाथ से नहीं बजती. So this is where I think we are getting from. There's a mutual thing, two-way street, both sides are equally responsible. But I would like to understand from each of you, like, are there any particular context where your experience is it works, trust-based philanthropy works better, is more suitable, or there are certain contexts it actually is not working? Anything from your experiences if you'd like to share? Context where definitely, yes, please.
I think once you're committed to it, then it happens as a value, and it happens in the way you show up. And I do believe that a trust-based approach will show up if you're doing a first-time partnership, if you're working with a long-term enduring partner, and even in the way you deal with rejection. So I do believe that this is binary. This is not conditional, that under these conditions, we will exercise the principles of trust-based philanthropy, and, in these conditions, we will not. And I think as funders, it's important for us to also ensure that we have the right, alignment of expectations as well. The regional context of organizations has a significant bearing on what they can and cannot, do. The life stage of an organization has to be taken into consideration. Organizations that are undergoing leadership transitions will have very unique challenges. Making sure that you understand the kind of runway they have today, right? If most of what an organization partner has short-term project funding, you need to be informed of where they are before we start putting down the expectations of what can be possible. So I do believe that if, as a funder, we're committed to the principles of care, of curiosity, of conversation, dialogue with partners, the onus is very clearly in understanding where this partner is and what would it take for the partnership to be successful, or for the partnership to be meaningful, because there could be failure as well. And, it is not that anybody is going to feel that, anyone was wronged in the process. So it's very difficult to switch, switch on trust and switch it off. I think it needs to be adapted very consciously, very mindfully, intentionally, based on where organizations are and where partners are. And it's important to challenge ourselves as well, whether we're doing it. So just as an example, one of the key things that we read at Ford is something called the CEP survey. So every 2 years, all our partners, can actually fill out an anonymous survey commenting on us, right? And it is a survey that runs into several pages. So if you thought you did well on one parameter, you will find that on some other parameter, your partners have actually, commented or rated you in a certain way. And not only that, you are now, placed yourself in the context of 400-500 other peer foundations. So it is relative as well. And I think it's deeply sobering when we also get validation for whether We said we were doing trust-based. We thought we were doing all of this. And what is really the lived experience of our partners at scale? And that is something, literally, I cannot tell you, Mangesh, when the report comes, I have a little bit of, it's like a report card, right?
But actually, I'm very happy to know that it happens.
And it is anonymous, and it gets, I think most surveys struggle on response rates. This survey gets very generous responses, right? I think more than 2/3 of our partners across the world and, in every single office report. And I do feel it's a healthy practice because we don't get that feedback. And I'm coming back to 1P on this, right? Power, it's a great leveler. Because we have to sit with it. We have to sit with that feedback as well. And I think that is when it helps us to also calibrate whether what we say, what we do, how we show up, is there consistency as well. I mean, I do feel that in the context of this conversation, especially I do feel I sometimes feel the onus is put a lot on organizations, that trust is, Pratyush, to your point, yesterday somebody saying, why do I have to be a hero? Why do I have to walk on hot coals to prove that I'm truthful, I'm honest, I have transparency, I will sacrifice, I will do all of that. Why? Right? And so I think part of it is also for us as funders to also think that this is not we're saying we would love to do it, but we can't. Because you're not, doing what you need to. I think it's important to really sit and think through, the idea of trust-based. What does it look like? How does it, get experienced by partners? How are we showing up? And are we also open to the feedback when it's not what we think it was?
Thank you. Very, very good points. Pratyush, you want to add something? Yeah.
Again, with example, so 2018, ACCs, if you see the whole annual report, all of a sudden the profitability has come down because of merger, market price of cement and all those things. And that was a drastic cut of CSR budget of 18 crores in one time. And I had 21 or 22 good NGO partners working across 26 locations. Some of them are in multiple locations. And I have to cut down 18 crores out of their budget. And budget MOU have signed for 5 years. So that we'll committing this. So, kaise karenge, all those things were happening. And then I called 2 days workshop for all our NGO partner. And as a closed door disclosure I given them, this is a new number for us. You tell us how we sell through. They came out with their idea. And I started CSR scorecard in 2014. Sir, CSR scorecard to hai hamare NGOs ka na. That is one way of doing. Second, need-based. We have every year need assessment and community engagement plan, which is being submitted by them, and they give a disclosure, my CSR scorecard this much, and this is supporting document. Based on that, without any ambiguity, they deducted 18 point something, and finalized reports was submitted to them. It was not done by me or my team or my finance and control team. They did it. We signed them with that day and they vanished. And I said, and to the extent they've taken pain, salary reduction also, without saying anything. And they grew up the same program to a different level altogether. Trust deficit, if you want to eradicate, as you said, it's power game also. You have to dilute some of your power to them to come out to the right solution. Mangesh was remembering when I started a special block program for 50 blocks with Riti across Pan India. Huge hotcake sale tha, but internally there are a lot of ambiguities were there. Multiple NGOs working in one block, looking at all 39 indicators, so who will do what, everyone wants to do everything. Then we started jointly moving to everybody's side, try to see what is each of our strength, what we can take to for in this case, say Sulgana block of Nashik district. And by the time we reached there, everybody were crystal clear themselves कि ये मैं करूँगा, ये आप करोगे. They started talking openly to each other. When we signed MOU, again it was crystal clear. Then we realized if these activities are there, this 7 is coming to X, then this is a budget. If these 8 are going to say Swades, these are the budget. because figure everything was given to them. They realized, and in an average per block it costing about 3.5 CR was coming. And we sailed through, and project is still going on. One of that block in Telangana, which was on rank of 252 or 242, last month is ranked 4th in India. And the DC is giving all credit to the local NGO partners and the LTM INT today.
Sonya, Riti, you want to add up to anything?
Yeah, so that's quite a loaded question. Okay, so there, I think like Reshma said, there is no one answer to it, right? And where does it work and when it doesn't work? I'll try and categorize it. So for us, and this is again from the experience with philanthropy, at COVID, it worked very well. Right, and I don't know, but something worked very well during COVID. There was and we were in the thick of COVID, and there was a massive amount of trust that just went out because there were the fun. I mean, at one side, of course, there was no trust because, and so it's very ironic. COVID, the entire scenario with COVID was that one side suddenly trust evaporated, and the other side suddenly trust built up, right? And suddenly faith in the organization built up. And the entire thing that we need to have these organizations survive, we cannot lose them. And so the momentum around saying that let us just support human resources on ground, even though work is not happening on ground. Let us give organizations, let's build capacity of organizations to deliver on vaccination, to deliver on, working with PHCs. And these are organizations that traditionally worked in education, that suddenly started interacting on health programs, building their capacity to actually respond to it. That entire momentum was a fantastic movement that happened as we speak in the country. Of course, it happened in certain places more than others, like for example, Bangalore. Because of the saturation of philanthropy, there was more trust around there because you could see it, it's tangible, right? Whereas maybe in the backs of beyond of Bundelkhand region, it didn't happen. The second part, so that's one example of perhaps where trust, faith and sustenance of organization worked out. The second part is that I'd say that in our portfolios, certain organizations, we have a heart and head connect, right? And when there's a heart and head connect, like it suddenly, everything in the middle works very well, right? So, so it is again something that I cannot explain what happens, but it is that, we don't have to have measurement frames for the organization. Let's look at the result framework, but make it very broad. Budgets, okay, if they are not utilizing or they want to move reallocation, it's okay, let's do that, right? So in certain cases, that works. The second part is where it worked for us is when we were out there saying that we want to do something, right? We want to turn a research, a climate action program, take it from research to deployment. That's where it's a huge chunk of money, but still it worked because the entire willfulness came from perhaps a trust. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but it came from there. The third part is that that in the smaller organizations, right? So the entire, I remember in one of the conversations during our meeting, there was this entire discussion about risk, and one of the persons just got up and said, if we are not ready to take risk, we should just shut down, right? So that's the passion that happens there within the other rooms about, about organizations that we continue to keep getting motivated about. So that these are the few things that has worked for us, at least in a trust-based philanthropy. Of course, I'd say that the complexity of unpacking power is the most difficult thing, right? And it changes with each organization, it changes with leadership, it changes when the philanthropy changes, right? So to hold on to that thing, saying that let's foundationally build this entire dynamics of equalizing power is very difficult in a philanthropy space. It has to come through co-journeys of philanthropies together, where each philanthropy influences the other one to do it. Right? So there's got to be many other pressure points to it. So that's perhaps where we there is a bit of a struggle, but and understanding that power is an important factor that plays in, and it's important to come as equals at the table, right? And equals in all sense, not just, you know, having programmatic discussion, but equals with respect to finances, or equals with respect to the grant agreements that we sign. I'm sorry? No, I don't think we do enough because as a philanthropy, we've got different structures that work internally, right? Not like decision making is not like a siloed approach. So you've got a legal team, you've got a finance team, right? And you have to then socialize it. I'm sure everybody agrees that that socializing takes a lot of thinking, a lot of well-timed planning, whom to speak with. So all of that happens.
हाँ तो क्या है ना कि वो कहते हैं सबके दुख हैं कुछ ना कुछ और yeah, so both sides. So I have been interacting with so many CSR, like not just Pratyush, and I fully understand their challenges. They have to manage so many internal stakeholders. That is one part of the problem. Many NGOs, we get every day 30 to 40 mails. So you are right. Funding के अलावा कुछ और बात तो करो यार. I have certain problems. So this is, I think, this should bring us closer because दुख में हम साथ समझते हैं एक दूसरे को, and that might give us a lot of opportunity to build more trust and understanding, isn't it?
I mean, I think it's also very important, and Sonya, what you said, triggered that. We also have to understand that this is a very difficult period for the sector. COVID was an aberration, but post that, the sector is bruised. It is struggling. There are all kinds of challenges. No wonder you led with from compliance to credibility first. I mean, in order of priorities, trust comes after compliance, clearly. I think it's important to recognize in any, foundation, philanthropy role, to really recognize where the sector is at this moment. And that is why it is important to recognize that the way we now show up is going to also define how successful we will be in our own, missions as well. Heroism has a certain, point after which it starts diminishing, and we also have to figure out whether we're, nourishing organizations sufficiently, whether we're, we don't use projects as a unit for funding anymore. It just doesn't work. And to recognize that before we expect people to report endlessly. So.
Yeah, so actually this brings me to the last section since we are running out of time, but we have 7-8 minutes. So we'll start with Riti, and each of you, if you can identify 1 or 2 shifts which all of us need to make this trust-based philanthropy work for everyone and goes to the next level. 1 or 2 shifts which will help us, enable us.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mangesh. And I think my answer to the last question was linked to this one, which is, are there conditions in which TBP won't work? Maybe not, but why it is not working is what we should focus on. And I think the journey looks different for different funders based on which situation you are in. When we talk of trust-based philanthropy, I think as Bridgespan, we keep hearing it's very difficult with CSR. CSR has, it's probably easier with a domestic philanthropy or a foundation. It's very tough with the CSR. But there are exemplars. There are exemplars who, show the way that, yes, long-term grants are possible. Yes, indirect cost funding is possible. So how do we, celebrate that and share more of that knowledge with the sector for others to also then emulate? I think feels important at this time. The same goes for NGOs as well. Like, what are some of the NGOs who are able to establish that long-term relationship with funders doing well that others can learn from? It is, at the heart of it, it's about matching the values and matching expectations. Then you get into a long-term relationship. So I would say it's different for different types of funders and different for NGOs as well. It's not a silver bullet that, otherwise everybody would be doing it if it was easy. We only see a very small group of funders and nonprofits actually be in that symbiotic kind of relationship. So it's learning from what is out there and contextualizing in your work feels important for me, from where I stand.
Any other shift? Sonya, if you want to add. one shift which we all need to make?
Um, So, and this is very transactional. I don't know if it's going to, I mean, something that we are trying also, and I'm trying internally, is that the shift is at the because the organization I'm associated with is an old and new organization. New because there was a possibility to make these changes internally, subtly though. So the shift is basically to build in trust in a very tangible form within the foundation of the organization, right? And then build in processes and systems overlaying that. What has happened, I think, with many with philanthropists in the past, and at least the ones that I'm engaged with, is that the philanthropy started and processes and systems started building up. That means the compliance, the levels of checks, the dialogues, the discussions around it, those started building up without trust being at the center of it, or without faith in the organization being at the center of it. I'm saying that it's important for us to shift that with the underlining thing, saying that let us see how we can internally deconstruct and understand what trust or faith in the social sector means. What is it that is causing us not to trust the social sector also, right? And see if we can solve for that through lived experiences of the 100 odd partnerships that we have, and let's start building processes that match that. I mean, it's a little complex, but it's...
Yeah, but, and just to add, maybe Reshma can also add to this. This building capacity, how much funders are willing to invest in that and willing to fail also. Like there's some cost of pilots taking some risk on new programs. Do you think funders in general are open now these days, or there is still huge effort required to make that shift?
I think so that's the shift, right? Are we willing to move from projects to ideas? Are we willing to take big bets on people? Are we willing to take a leap of faith with an organization whose mission and values we resonate with deeply?
Sorry, and then what stops? Yes, it is to be done. What is holding funders back besides internal stakeholder mind? But that is the role of that person, right?
That is a whole panel discussion, Mangesh. But I think some of it also has to do with power and control. I think if you choose to be in a foundation or a funding or a CSR role, and I've now done 3 archetypes of organizations. If you're in that leadership role, it is your job to manage your stakeholders. It is your role to create that alignment. You have to do it. That is, so the mindset shift is do the hard work,
Absolutely.
do what it's going to take, and be patient as well. Like I think that we were discussing earlier, this desire for quick results, this desire to move things quickly, is not going to happen. But what holds back is the fact that we don't acknowledge the value of, and I don't want to call it failure, just the value of things and shifts taking the time that they need to. And for us to learn that, part of our roles is also to educate our community of internal stakeholders. And let me just give you a very quick example. The business board in my previous role, was the board of my foundation, right? Now these are like hard-nosed folks who only recognize numbers, right? And now suddenly we took them to a community in East UP, and the girls were using, a phone and could geotag a wheat field that was growing fortified wheat. And the sales director said, he said, my sales guys cannot identify and geotag a retail store, and you're telling me that these girls can do it? And I said, yes. And that's because we've made 5 years of investments in these programs, right? So it is our role, and I do feel that not that anyone should have any sympathy for funders, but it is turning out to be a layered and complex role, which is also the reason why, to what Sonya said, it's important for, this community to also start figuring out a way to sort out our big internal hurdles. Because if we cannot do that, the solidarity that the field needs, the support that organizations need, we will fall short in terms of their expectations. So this is hard work. There's no nicer way of putting it.
Yes,
So maybe,
Pratyush.
I'll put it another way. Madam was talking about initially on trust deficit. Whether it is between you and your donor existing or a prospect donor. I always say in one word you are saying, it's like boots on ground. Have a joint visit, what is working to show them, help them to understand what is working and what is not working. If you not do that, the donor will put pressure, nahi, this is not acceptable, they will not trust you. It may go up to the level of your MOU discontinuation. It will create further deficit of trust, may lead towards, financial irregularities. कुछ भी दिमाग में आ सकता है. Other way, the NGOs will say, कैसे बुद्धू लोग हैं नहीं समझता है. Sincerely, it is happening. The best thing is boots on ground. Jointly go see the site and try to help them understand what is working, what is not working. It has two results. Some transformative idea, some breakthrough idea will come from your external partner who is coming first time to the site. Believe me, sometimes it works like anything. एक साल में आपको 10 साल का अचीवमेंट दिख जाएगा आपको. Otherwise, if you are good on, you have tried everything, and if same language you and your community talks to the donors is ready to bend down, give you the same fund for some other activities as well, because trust deficit has not gone down. If you don't do, I think, oh, फिर चलेगा कुछ. And this also goes to my experience to your prospect donors. Today, the head CSR, the teams, even the philanthropic teams, they're pretty deep into different states. They're moving around and all. Try to gauge them. Or some of them are visiting to your district, your state capital, and try to arrange their visit. Not necessarily their existing partner. It might be your future partner, but help them to show up your good works. Believe me, that works. And if trust is higher before the signing of MOU, I think that will decide your longevity of your MOU.
Thank you so much. So, couple of things which clearly emerging is it has to be we versus me. I think we all are in it together, and we must try to understand both sides. And like organizations on ground are managing communities, right? They're dealing with them, and that itself is a big fight, I should say, challenge. Similarly, inside, and we have seen like 1 or 2 member team managing 40 NGO partners in 70 locations in India. Many times I wonder, my team works on M&A report to be sent to donor. कितने लोग पढ़ते होंगे every quarter में? And there's different formats for each donor. We all know that. But I also see if this kind of ownership, I think, which has come out I'm very happy to hear that what Reshma also shared, that she also gets evaluated. I hope it must be happening with CSR also. But I don't know, 7 pages or 1 pages. But if it happens, imagine the richness it can bring. First, it is a transformation for the person himself or herself. And that also empowers the organizations on ground, right? Because somewhere the person would like to make it work, right? And Sonya also mentioned in the beginning that when philanthropist has decided to give, intent is always there, right? So there's no doubt about intention. It is about the practices and the principles of engagement. So anything last 1 or 2 comments, quick comments and words, then we can close.
I just had one reflection.
Quickly, yeah.
Yeah, one reflection that all of the things that we are talking about is, placing trust, betting on people, thinking long-term, bold bet, is taken for granted on the for-profit side. Right? That's the way the world works. In this side, there's so many questions. I'm not saying we have to pivot to the other side, but there are things we can learn from there and integrate here that builds the relationship and trust among different actors going forward.
Okay, so I'll just end with what we follow and it has helped us actually. Alignment of 3 Ps, alignment of purpose. I think that is first thing. Any donor, when we are engaging, is there an alignment of purpose? We are rural, we are holistic, and we have community-driven change. Second is alignment of principles. I think we have heard many examples here, principles of engagement. And third and final is alignment of processes. I think this is also important. So purpose, principles, and processes. this has helped us, and I think if we can all work towards it, definitely I can see the kind of scale we can achieve through trust-based philanthropy. Thank you very much.
That was such an interesting conversation, and I realized that 1 hour was too short for it. Thank you so much to our speakers, and to extend our gratitude and appreciation, I would request Trisha Verma, Director GKH, to come on stage and felicitate our speakers. The next session is in this hall, Bhim. It's a poet and rapper Mahi ji. She'll join us shortly. Please be seated. May I ask the photographer to take a group picture, please? I would request all the participants, attendees, guests to be seated. The next session is here itself in Bhim. Apologies, but we do not have any breaks. We'll start right away.